You're listening to Stories on Sleepless Nights. Just a heads up before we begin, everything shared on this podcast is meant strictly for entertainment. A good story to tune into when you can't sleep. Settle in and let's get started. Welcome back to Stories on Sleepless Nights. This is your host, Genesis. We talk a lot about old places, history, and the moments that make you pause and look around a room twice. Tonight's story comes from another anonymous listener who wrote about an experience from their college days. It started out as a completely normal afternoon, just two friends waiting around between classes. But within a matter of seconds, the entire environment shifted, and it left them both questioning what they were actually witnessing. Let's get right into the story. Sepia. The Manila heat in 1999 was a physical thing, a heavy blanket you had to fight through just to breathe. But that afternoon in an FEU hallway, the air was different. It wasn't just the usual oppressive warmth. It was thick, heavy, charged with an otherworldly presence. The familiar scent of floor wax and student sweat was still there, but underneath it was an ancient essence, like dust and old paper, the smell of a place that held too many memories. We were all waiting for our next class, killing time in that special way only college students can, when I noticed Marian had gone completely still. Her eyes were wide, unblinking and fixed on something down the hallway. Mare? I tapped her shoulder, but she didn't respond. I leaned closer, waving a hand in front of her face. Earth to Marian. She finally turned to me slowly, her face pale under the fluorescent lights. "Are you seeing what I am seeing?" she whispered, her voice trembling slightly. I followed her gaze, but saw nothing unusual. It's just the usual crowd of students milling about. Seeing what? The guy with a ridiculous backpack? No. She shook her head, her eyes darting back to whatever had captured her attention. There's not right here. When I placed my hand on her shoulder again, the world dissolved around us. The vibrant colors of 1999 bled away, replaced by warm sepia tones, like an old photograph. The hallway stretched before us, suddenly bare of students. The concrete floor became worn wooden planks, and the fluorescent lights transformed into ornate fixtures, casting a soft golden glow. Before us stood an old man, a janitor from what appeared to be the 1920s or 1930s. He wore loose-fitting trousers held up by suspenders over a simple white shirt that had yellowed with age. His face was a roadmap of wrinkles, with deep-set eyes that seemed to carry the weight of decades. His hands, gnarled and calloused, gripped the wooden handle of a mop with practiced ease. He moved with a slow, methodical rhythm, dip, squeeze, swish, his work boots making soft, scuffing sounds against the wooden floor. The hallway itself transformed too. Where once had been bulletin boards cluttered with announcements and posters, now hung sepia photographs of stern-faced men and women in formal attire. The walls were adorned with intricate moldings I'd never noticed before. and the arched doorway seemed taller, more imposing. Are we really seeing this? Marian whispered beside me, her voice barely audible. The janitor continued his work, seemingly oblivious to our presence. His mop bucket was made of galvanized metal, and the water inside had a slight yellowish tinge. As he worked, he hummed a tune, a melancholic melody, unfamiliar. It's a tune that seemed to belong to another era. I reached out to touch the wall. My fingers met with solid resistance. We were here, wherever here was. The air smelled different too, of old wood, floor wax, and another scent, like rain on pavement. Time travel? Marian asked, her eyes still wide with wonder. Or maybe we're seeing through the veil, I replied, remembering all the stories I heard about FEU's supernatural elements. This place has been here since the 1930s, right? The janitor paused his work, looking directly at us, or rather, through us. His eyes seemed to focus on something beyond our presence, as if we were ghosts in his timeline. Then he returned to his mopping, the rhythmic swish-swish filling the silent corridor. As suddenly as it had begun, the sepia world dissolved. The wooden floor became concrete again. The ornate lights transformed back into fluorescence, and the hallway was once again filled with a chatter of students rushing to their next class. Marian and I sat in stunned silence for a full minute before she finally spoke. Did that really happen? I nodded slowly, my mind racing with possibilities. Whatever it was, it felt real. For the rest of that day and many days after, we found ourselves unconsciously avoiding that particular hallway, though we couldn't quite explain why. Sometimes when I visit and walk through FEU's corridors even now, I still catch myself glancing down empty hallways, half expecting to see that old janitor with his mop and bucket, forever cleaning in a time that no longer exists. Thanks to our anonymous sender again for that story. What makes this account stand out is how calm it was. There weren't any classic jump scares or aggressive spirits. It felt more like a glitch in the system. A couple of details really jump out. For example, physical details. The sender mentioned reaching out and feeling solid wood instead of modern concrete walls, along with smelling rain and aged timber. That level of sensory detail makes it sound less like a hallucination and more like an actual physical overlap. Another one would be residual memories. Paranormal investigators often talk about residual energy, the idea that a building can absorb decades of routine and replay it like an old film tape. The janitor did not react to them. He seemed completely focused on his work, almost as if the two students were the invisible ones in his timeline. And one last thing would be FEU's history. The campus has been around for nearly a century. When a location holds that much daily foot traffic over 80 or 90 years, it makes you wonder if the past ever truly clears out. And it definitely makes you rethink those moments when an old building suddenly feels heavy or quiet for a few seconds. If you have experienced something similar, may it be at school, work, or maybe an old house, write in and share your story with us. You can remain completely anonymous. Until next episode, Take a closer look the next time you walk down a quiet corridor. Have a good night and sleep well, if you can. You've been listening to Stories on Sleepless Nights. If you're glad you tuned in, take a second to hit follow on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or wherever you listen to podcasts. You can also join me on Facebook at Stories on Sleepless Nights to stay connected. Until next time, take care.